What can you say about Sonic? It's one of the most successful franchises of all time, and this game right here started it off. Sonic the Hedgehog in the Sega Genesis was absolutely fantastic, though not my favorite out of the series. That right goes to Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which was an even better game than the original. However, are you familiar with the Sega Saturn? Actually, I don't own a Sega Saturn, so I'm just going to show you some screenshots from Google Images, but whatever. The Sega Saturn had a game called Sonic Jam. The game Sonic Jam was basically a collection of Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles, and was one of the greatest games on the Sega Saturn, just because it had all the original Sonics. It also had a 3D type area where you and Tails could run around, collect rings, and basically just screw around. This, at that point, was one of the very first times we ever saw Sonic in the true 3D world, not counting Sonic 3D Blast. So the Saturn had Sonic Jam. The Saturn also had a game called... who am I kidding? Sonic R! Now, one thing needs to be said about this before we officially begin. I do not own a Sega Saturn. I don't wish to. There weren't really that many games. So this is going to be recorded using Sega Gems Collection on the GameCube. Without further ado, let's begin. So, upon you booting up the game for the first time, you'll notice that it's a pretty good menu. Hope you enjoy it. It's the only freaking nice thing in the game. Not soon after that, you'll actually start playing and notice the major flaw with Sonic R. It's a racing game. I'm not kidding. It's a frickin' racing game. Come on! Was it really necessary to turn this into a racing game? Are you friggin' kidding me, Sega? Look! This isn't racing! This isn't racing! Oh my god, I just don't know what they were thinking! What was the point of making a Sonic racing game? Sonic's all about high-speed action, not trying to be the first. You know what the real kick in the balls for this game is? There's no plot to it. There really isn't. All you do is race. Unlock characters down the way, sure, but yeah, there's no plot. So what's the point? How did he actually get into this position? And he's racing with Dr. Robotnik, his enemy! This makes no sense! Oh, whatever, guys. I'll try to keep a cool head and review this thing like normal. So, since there is absolutely no plot whatsoever, I think the gameplay is pretty self-explanatory. I'll bring up the controls in a few minutes, but as for right now, let's just talk about how the game plays. Sonic R is your typical racing game. All you do is run left and right, hold up, and jump occasionally if you need to get higher ground. It's really nothing special, and it could be any racing game. As shown briefly before, Sonic R only has 5 stages, which is pathetically small for a racing game of this kind. Look at a game like CTR. Look how many stages are in that game. That's a perfect amount. Why couldn't they incorporate that into this? So, instead, you're left with 4 to 5 bland tracks. Ugh. I don't know exactly what they were thinking. The Saturn had enough power to have quite a few stages to it. Wasn't there a NASCAR game on the Saturn? So, why didn't they incorporate the number of stages into this game? It just makes it really boring to play. Not to mention, you have to run through these stages with horrible controls. On my very first attempt ever playing this game, I did nothing but bounce into walls, and I honestly thought it was my fault. I thought it was my GameCube controller. I thought I was doing something wrong that was making the game fault. But it turns out the game just has terrible controls, and the walls seem to have magnets in them. You do nothing but bounce around, and it feels like you're really not in control. It's just the game deciding when you can go forward and when you can bounce into walls. I suppose if I do have to give the controls credit, it's really easy to use. Holding forward runs, left and right turns, and A or B jumps. It's not a tough thing to get used to, especially considering the formula of a 3D racer's been done before. So I gotta give it credit that the controls themselves aren't that bad. It's just the controls implemented into the game are horrible. If you want to talk about presentation, okay. The models themselves for the time look fairly good, especially Sonic's model. As far as the music goes, well, you either have to love it or hate it. I mean, there's not really an in-between here. I will play some of it though, so you guys can make your mind up without playing this piece of crap. Did you notice anything about them? You know, they're high quality. They don't fit the game, not at all. Trust me, this music does not even come close to fitting the type of game. It's a racing game. You don't need this kind of music, but it's fairly high quality. I don't mind any of the music, but I definitely won't be sticking it on my iPod anytime soon. Alright, let's wrap this up. Did you know that there are actually hidden characters in this game? Unfortunately, I'm not insane enough to have collected all the emblems that you need to unlock them, but there are hidden characters in this game and they can be unlocked. They range from Metal Sonic, Metal Knuckles, Dr. Eggman, and eventually you can get Tails Doll. Ugh. Also unlockable is Super Sonic, who can completely own anyone you race against, apparently. He's the most overpowered character in the game. So at the end of this all, everything set in video stone, what do I honestly think of Sonic R as a whole? I think, unless you're really curious, you shouldn't play this. Even if you are really curious, just look it up on YouTube. Don't waste your time playing it. It's really, really bad. Like, seriously, it's probably the worst Sonic game I've played aside from 06 and Sonic Genesis. It was definitely the worst one on the Saturn. And, well, just stay away from it. I guess if you want a good Sonic racing game, turn to the Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing and Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed. Those are both really good racing games that have Sonic in a car, which I guess is sort of an issue. Can't he just run? But, you know, it's better than this pile of crap. Yeah, I think I'll just stick to the either real modern games or the original classic cartridges. I guess the Genesis does what the Sega Saturn doesn't. It doesn't sound as nice as it normally does. Ugh. Well, I hope to catch you guys next time, and hopefully I won't be playing this bad of a game. Hope you enjoyed my torture. You're welcome.